After World War I, fashion in the States began to change drastically. Over the years, it was the usual thing for men to wear some variation of a three-piece suit. However, in the 1920s, their fashion started to evolve. Young men who usually wore suits the same as their elders began to change their style. Instead of wearing a nice clean-cut suit, they would wear wide-legged trousers and +4s. Plus pants are categorized by how far the pants fall below the knee before being secured around the leg area. Men also started wearing sharp, unpadded suits with bright, spring-colored fabrics. Men stopped wearing suspenders and used belts more often. They also threw out the idea of silk ties and wore bow ties and knit ties because they were well-fitting with formal and informal clothing. Other things that men wore in the 1920s that were kind of the latest fad were Oxford bags and different types of hats. As you can see, Leonardo DiCaprio is sporting a Panamanian straw hat and doing a pretty good job of sporting it. The man to the far left is wearing a fedora, which his hat and Leonardo DiCaprio's hat are kind of more used in the cabana areas. The guy in the middle is sporting a golfer hat, which was the most common hat that was used in the 1920s, mainly because it was the cheapest. And it was pretty good looking, not gonna lie. Oxford bags were a big type of pant. They were big at the bottom, small at the top. They were slimming. They showed the men's kind of overall shape, and at the bottom they were hemmed and cuffed, and in the front there was a front crease. Women's fashion in the 1920s, bustles and corsets were forgotten about, and they gave designers the freedom of creativity. The colors in the 1920s became lighter and brighter. The designs were short with different textures and patterns, creating a new dress style that everyone fell in love with immediately. Because the dresses were slightly above the knee, it showed off a woman's legs and feet, which resulted in more stylish shoes. Stockings were also more prominent and were made in a variety of colors to match their outfits. Women also wore extravagant hats that involved embellishments and flowers and beads. The best hairstyle for those particular hats was the bob, which was introduced in the late 1920s by Louise Brooks. Automobiles in the 1920s were the sickest thing ever. They were super sleek and just looked like you were cruising on water. Cars in the 1920s became an essential possession, having an automobile made traveling much easier, and soon almost every American family owned a car. People saw they needed cars when they noticed the ease of travel, low cost, and reliability of the Ford brand. Designers also saw people's interest in cars, so they came out with a fashion line for cars. For example, men had leather gloves that were air ventilated, and they also had leather jackets, and they also created a headscarf for women so that their hair would not get messed up. And so automobiles and clothing fashion kind of came together to create the 1920s lifestyle.